Hi, I'm Garbreak1, and this is Midgardia's cool crowdfunding show. I'm here today with Christopher Peter from Fight Second Edition. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. Thanks for having me here today.
Glad to have you. So, why don't you tell me a little bit about Fight?
All right, Fight is a tabletop role-playing game, and the goal of the rules was to provide a role-playing experience that could capture the feel of both the characters and the kinds of stories that you see in fighting video games, Street Fighter, King of Fighters, things like that. But in addition to providing a traditional sort of role-playing experience, I wanted also the rules to feel like the way that combat works in a fighting game. As a result, combat has some interesting dynamics that are not typical for role-playing games in terms of combat systems, and it allows players to really get a sense um, of being able to create their own role-playing game, excuse me, their own fighting video game, but to be able to play it out at their table instead.
Cool. Uh, so Fight's been around for a while, right? A couple of years, I think, the first edition?
About 10 actually.
Good lord.
Yeah, nine years. It was published in 2010.
Wow, yeah, alright, I underestimated a little bit. I think I've looked through the book and haven't had an actual chance to play it. So, what separates Fight from, well, I don't know, D&D or the Old World of Darkness Street Fighter game, I guess would be the two obvious
Sure.
comparisons.
Okay. I mean, aside from genre as far as D&D goes, um, I mean, at its core, despite what I said a moment ago, at its core, that there's not a fundamental difference. It's still players sitting around the table interacting with the game master. So nothing like that has changed. Um, it does tend to play more easily with a smaller group. I've played Fight with large groups, but it's a bit unwieldy with a large group. I think the sweet spot would probably be 3 or 4 players for that. So in that sense, I tend to think of Dungeons and Dragons as going for larger play groups. But the other game you mentioned, White Wolf's Street Fighter game, to be honest, way back in the 1990s, that game was the reason why I started writing Fight in the first place. Don't get me wrong, we absolutely adored that game and played a lot of it. I wasn't a part of it, but in my gaming group, which has been steady for decades, there was a group that played Street Fighter for almost 6 years in a single campaign.
Dang.
Um, I yeah, I'm not even quite sure how you pull that off, but they did. So there's a lot of love there. But the more that I played it, the more I realized how limited it was, and how it didn't really capture the feel of Street Fighter. It really did kind of feel like, well, it felt like a World of Darkness game that had Street Fighter attached to it, because that's pretty much what it was. It was fun. It was a lot of fun, but I was looking for something that captured the feel of those worlds more accurately.
Cool. Yeah, I see that you've got a fairly in-depth initiative system with like blocks and evasions and stuff, which
Yes.
reminds me of that. Um, Certainly not a bad thing.
Yeah. The combat system has the initiative system. Let's talk about that for a moment. In addition to rolling for initiative, characters also have to roll their control at the same time. And initiative and control determine not only how fast you act, but also what you can do when it is your turn to act. A character with low control is only going to be able to throw basic attacks. A character with very high control can launch an extended combo. So that means that characters may be engaging in multiple attacks before their opponent gets to act. And then, equally, or perhaps even more significantly, a character that has been hit suffers hit stun, which is an experience from fighting video games, and so they are limited in what they can do. At lower level, characters lose their actions entirely. Higher level characters are limited by how they can respond, which makes the initiative game far more important as a result, and it makes defense more important as well. So in addition to the attacks that characters might use, there are 3 different forms of defense depending on how actively the character wants to defend. Blocks, evasions, and counters.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you've got the full getting boxed in a corner and punched in the face over and over experience.
That's right. Yeah. In fact, yeah, with the walls rules that are optional, you can literally do that. Yeah.
That's most of my experience with fighting games.
Well, don't get me wrong. I make no claims as to being particularly good at them. However, I love them to death, and so I play them. I am just good enough to not make a fool of myself, but I'm not going to enter a competition anytime soon. But I just I also like supers role playing games a lot, and so these characters had a lot of the same things that appeal to me about superheroes. That they have these distinctive names, these distinctive costumes, their own superpowers, and I just wanted to do something more with them.
And like the really weird bits of mythology, like the Satsui no Hado in Street Fighter, and like
Right.
how all that stuff breaks down and works. Yeah, no, it's a rabbit hole you can get sucked deep down into.
Yeah, and some of the video games are now taking more advantage of that. For anything that people might like or not like about Mortal Kombat, they've certainly mastered the story mode as far as a fighting game goes. But one of the enduring jokes about fighting games, and I get it, is that story. Who cares about story? All you really are is these with these characters are beating each other up, and like I said, on some level, I can't deny that's what's going on in a fighting game story. But when we start to add the background details of the characters and some of the organizations that they work for and all, to me it always sounded like I always thought, well, if I came up with this story at the table in a role playing game, I'd be pretty satisfied with the story. And so I think that I think sometimes people are looking for something more epic and don't quite realize that the story doesn't have to be epic in order to be a decent story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if one of my campaigns ended with somebody like giving up fighting so that they can go be a young single woman again, I'd be pretty happy with that as an ending. After avenging their father.
See, there's a pretty deep cut right there.
Yeah.
That's going back to the ending of Street Fighter 2. Yeah.
Also, I see that one of your stretch goals is the like streamlined button masher edition. I think
Yes.
That's me right there. Uh,
Yeah, that was that stretch goal. Here's hoping we get that far. Was actually suggested to me by a longtime fan of the game, a great guy, and his group normally plays Hero, so they're no stranger to complicated games, but. He thought something that was easier to teach new players would be a big boon, and it was him who came up with the name the Button Masher Edition, and so I, with his permission, liberally stole that.
it is.
So yeah, I wanted to also be able to come up with a version where you didn't have to feel burdened by the amount of options that the core rules do present to you.
It is an absolutely incredible name. Um, Immediately tells you what this edition is for. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because complexity and intricate, subsystems and that kind of stuff can be good once you understand all of them. But it's certainly a
Right.
barrier to new players.
It is, and people have often asked, what sort of crunch level that I put fight at, and I don't think that it's a sort of high crunch game, but then again, I understand people's tolerance for that sort of thing varies tremendously. It is not a light game. It is not a narrative game. But that doesn't mean that it's Battlelords of the 23rd century either. Um, it's a game that has like some supers games, it has some upfront loaded character generation weight to it. And then as far as the in-game play goes, the non-combat play is ridiculously simple. I didn't try to reinvent the wheel on a skill system. It's a straight D10 plus skill beat a difficulty level. Combat has some unique mechanics to it, which is where the weight comes in, but I don't think that it requires much time to get used to it. And I tried in this second edition to really put more into the combat rules to help make the flow better for new players.
Right. Yeah, and I know one of the things I heard about the world of the Street Fighter game was, once you got into it, the combat system is great, but like those first couple sessions are rough.
Yeah. Well, there's some very unintuitive elements in that felt odd,
Yeah, I
but it's
mean,
still a fun system. Yeah,
such is the nature of licensed games for good or for ill.
exactly.
Uh,
Something I never bothered to even attempt to do with this one is to seek a license for it. Though
yeah,
if I could, I would seek the King of Fighters license. That would be my dream gig for that.
good taste, good taste.
Yeah.
Uh, so why don't you tell me a little bit about the like stretch goals, some of the
Sure.
really cool backer levels, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Um, as I'll take this opportunity to explain one of the things that I've gotten a few questions about the backer levels, why some of the backer levels are the same price for different rewards. And because I am an independent publisher of essentially myself and one really great guy helping me out, I do not have the resources to do a lot of production. So Drive Through RPG is able to really assist with that and doing the print on demand work. So the backer levels that are the same price for different awards are because they are entitling one to a coupon for a print on demand for the different levels, the hardcover black and white and the hardcover color book. As far as the stretch goals go, the first stretch goals were really to get the art that I want the book to have. I had to decide because full color art is expensive and the book is long, and so I wanted to make sure that there wasn't long stretches of the book with no art because that's not fun. So I tried to figure out what was the funding level that I could do in order to produce the book in a way that was acceptable at the very lowest. But then I wanted to make some stretch goal levels to really put the amount of art in there that I thought the book should have. So those are the first two. The Spanish translation is my own personal hope that we get to. My co-writer, Aleo Morello, and has done a lot to promote the game in the Spanish-speaking world. He's from Argentina, and I've been blessed to have him on the project. His development work for second edition has been excellent. In fact, I think it's fair to say that if you read the second edition, you say, "Hey, that's a really cool edition." It was probably Aleo's work. So it really he made a difference, and so we want to make the game more widely available to those who have been supporters of it for so long. But there's layout costs, there's translation costs to do that. So that's why that is in there.
Yeah,
And then the other one, we talked a little bit about the Button Masher edition, but the other one was a PDF that I have not given a clever name yet for special moves. And since I'll be a little bit more forthright here for this to talk about that, my goal for that was to enable people who might have their old White Wolf Street Fighter characters lying around and wanted a very easy way to convert those characters to fight. So my goal was to be able to make it so those characters could. It would be a matter of just simply plugging in some different numbers to be able to get fight playable characters out of your old Street Fighter stuff.
the alley brawler translation, something like that.
Exactly.
Oh, that's pretty good. And yeah, translating it to Spanish is going to be great. It's the third most common language in the world, or first?
I've lost track. Yeah.
English is second. I know that one. I guess
Yeah.
Chinese is probably first. Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy
Probably, yeah.
the guy who introduced me to this actually is a native Spanish speaker. So yeah, you do
There
have
you
some
go.
popularity there.
Well, I was able to track for over the past 10 years. I've had some sense of being able to track where people have that are from where they've purchased the rules, and I noticed that there was a lot of players in Central and South America. So that's why I think that's a great idea. I will also say that my choice of the artist for the new edition is also someone who has, I think, done a really great job with a manga style that is actually more characteristic, I think, of some Central and South American artists that I've seen who have got a slightly westernized take on manga style, and I did that deliberately.
Yeah, the art is fantastic. You look at
Yeah,
that, you
Roy
know,
Sutherland's an amazing artist, and I'm lucky to have him.
yeah, like
He's
you,
done some work for Udon. He's done some work for Image Comics.
yeah, yeah. You look at this art, like you know exactly what you're getting. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, it's great.
the first edition cover revised one is fantastic. That is the essence of this game. It's a
Yes,
man with a
yeah,
flaming fist about to punch somebody in the face. Oh, she's got a
right.
flaming fist too. Actually, yes, flaming fist fighting is yeah. So I know
That could have been an alternate name for the game, Flaming Fist Fighting.
well, you're welcome to it. I know that you had a bunch of expansions for the first one, including the Shonen book, which was actually why I was shown this in the first place, as I have a just unkillable obsession with trying to run anime themed RPGs, no matter how often that's a bad idea. I'm working on a Big Eyes Small Mouth campaign right now because
Oh my,
yeah,
what edition?
second, the good one.
Okay, well, yeah, that's the best of them, I think. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. First is a mess. Second,
yeah,
they learned. We ran the Sailor Moon official RPG for it a while back. Oh boy, you can tell it's their second book. It's not good, dude. But
no, it's quite a mess.
yeah,
But then I liked the second edition of Big Eye Small Mouth. It didn't take much work to figure out how to break it if you wanted to, but as long as everybody agrees to play nice, it works okay.
yeah, and
Um,
that's a characteristic of like more kind of narrative-y games generally.
right.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, except it's a narrative game with a point by creation system, which is where it can get
yeah.
messy.
It's it's early 2000s. It was a different time.
Right.
I mean, now
um,
yeah, nowadays it would be a powered by the apocalypse game, easy.
that's true. That's very true. Um, when I did the Shonen expansion for it, which is one of the things that I wanted to do pretty much since the game launched, and just took some time to put it together. Um, the specific Shonen rules that are additions to the rules um, are still in the same vein as the rest of the fight rules, which means there's some more points than people might want into. But I really again was trying to figure out how do you capture that feel of a power level 9,000, and to get some mechanical value to the idea that my friendship is going to make a difference. Um, and especially the one thing that I did that when people talked about shonen gaming that they really wanted was the notion that either a single blow or perhaps even no blow at all could win a fight, and that's hard to translate to traditional role playing games. But I'm pretty happy with the gambit system that I include in there, which allows a person to actually win a fight without ever throwing a punch. Um, so that was that I was pleased with the way that one came out, and I'm also happy because that was the first time I used Roy Sutherland as an artist, and he just knocked it out of the park with the cover imagery for that one. Um, the other supplements that are available right now, round two is a generic here's more of everything book, and some elements, but not a lot. I would say maybe 35% of the content of round two was folded into the second edition rules, but I wanted the book not to be obsolete, so I still kept a lot of the stuff in there as is. People sometimes wonder where are the fatality rules. They're in round two. If you decided that you need to have rules to make sure that after you defeated your opponent that you can also rip their spine out, then those rules are in there. Challengers is your standard villains book or enemies book, and so I forgot how many guys are in there. 30 or 40 fully made characters of a variety of power levels are in that book. I thought when I wrote that one, I thought the idea of collecting characters from various other people who had contributed characters and putting it together in book form was going to be a really easy project, and it turns out that it wasn't. editing and tracking, and it took so long to actually do that. And then even after it was finished and published, um, another guy who did some development work for second edition went through and he sent me the list of, here are the mathematical errors you made, and it was embarrassingly long. So I had to go through and change all of that and put the updated PDF out. That's the version that's available in case anybody is wondering. But yeah, that was. I'm going to think twice before I want to run back to do that again. We talked about shonen, and the last one, the Arenas book, written by David Yellow, is the only book so far for Fight that was not primarily written by me. He had some ideas. I thought he had some interesting ideas. I said, tell you what, you write them up. I'll edit it and put it together. I consider it something more of an unearthed arcana, really. He's got some interesting ways to do certain rules that I'll say personally I wouldn't use myself, but I think that there are interesting ways to modify the system to show that you can bend it pretty far without it breaking.
Right. So second edition is pretty much mechanically compatible with first, then.
Yes. Yeah, there's a few. My original goal was for it to be about 90 to 95% backwards compatible, but then I realized to pull that off kind of questions whether you're doing a second edition at all. So it's about, I would say, 85% backwards compatible, and it's characters with their special moves will need some minor adjustments on special move levels. The combat system itself has not had major changes. Like I said, my concern was cleaning it up and especially making it easier for multiple people to be fighting at the same time.
Right. So you should be able to grab the shonen supplement and run it with this with like minimal issue then.
Yeah, especially the shonen supplement. As I'm going through it in my head, practically nothing. It should run just fine.
All right. Well, that's handy.
Yeah.
The classic RPG publisher thing where you put a second edition and now you have to print out reprint every first edition thing. Yeah. I'm glad to see that's not the case here.
I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, no, it's
going forward with.
Yeah, it's not fun for you.
With the second edition, I wanted to go forward with new stuff, not reprinting old stuff.
Yeah, it's not fun for you. It's not fun for the player base.
Right.
We've seen how it goes with like Exalted, where they have to reprint like 20-something books every edition.
Yeah, massive amount. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything that I haven't brought up that you want me to?
Yeah, one of the things that was, I just mentioned it a moment ago, one of the things that was a big design point for the second edition was a perception that had gone out with the first edition that it only ran one-on-one fights. So people thought I know there's a lot of people who thought Fight made a really fun sort of board game, like make a character and have them fight another character and, kill an afternoon doing fights, which by the way, is a perfectly valid way to play. I mean, but that obviously wasn't the intention. And so I actually read some comments on gaming forums or even in reviews that it only did one-on-one fighting, which was never the intention. But understandably, as I look back at the first edition, it was clear that multiple fighters wasn't an afterthought. It just wasn't something I worried about so much. In my own running of the game, whenever I had multiple players, which was most of the time, the way I solved it was if I had 3 players and there was 3 opponents, I just paired them off as separate one-on-one fights. And that made things simple. But sometimes people want the brawl. They want my 3 guys against against the 3 player characters, and they want to all interact, trading off opponents and the like. So the reason it didn't work as well in the first edition was I was committed in my design to want to make it so that you didn't need a battle map of any kind, that you could do it without. And I succeeded for one-on-ones, but I made it hard to do for multiple fighters. So in the second edition, now almost 10 years later, I got to thinking about that and had frankly forgotten why I was so committed to that design point in the first place. And I said, you know what, make this really easy, a battle map. And it's not a big complicated hex map or anything. It's a simple 6 square by 6 square battle map that you can put. I mean, I've tested it out with having 10 guys fighting each other on that map, and it works fine. I suppose if you want to have even bigger fights than that, then you know it's going to get a little crowded. But who knows? Maybe that's the kind of chaos you want. But it works, and so we had to then go back and look at various rules that affected movement or knockback, and say how's that going to impact in a multiple combatant battle. And I'm really excited with the way that the rules came out, so that if you got a group and you want your group to all be fighting it all at the same time, that it's very easy to manage now in the second edition.
I'm glad to hear that, because that's one of the things I love about tabletop games is, you know, the weird way battles can kind of spill over, and like the tactical positioning and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
There's
yeah.
I'm going to use one point of comparison, and then I might regret doing this because it's a polarizing statement. But I think that there is a light similarity to some of the D&D 4 in terms of the way some of the interactions come about. It doesn't have the crazy power overload that D&D 4 has, but the idea where positioning and between characters and all is certainly a part of it.
Right, well, that makes sense for this genre, because like one of the main criticisms of D&D 4th edition is that it plays like it's an MMO as opposed to a tabletop game. So the one meant to emulate video games plays kind of like a video game. It's not actually a bad thing. Whereas in D&D 4th, it was kind of jarring.
Yeah, it just comes down to of whether, I know some people are very much against having any sort of battle map on the table, that takes them out of the role playing mode. And again, you can do it. I whenever I've done Fight online, running it as a play by post, which by the way I don't necessarily recommend, but I do it anyway. I do it anyway. I've always had to do the one-on-one fights instead.
Yeah.
But that's not the ideal for sitting around the table.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, not every group wants to do maps and stuff. It's preference, but
yeah,
first edition's still there.
Yeah, and you can do it without. It's more complicated.
Yeah,
it's hard to get a sense of it.
Yeah, if/when we do it, it'll probably be on Roll20, so you know that's dealt with for us.
Yes, that would be a better format for it, certainly.
Yeah, how'd you get into tabletop gaming?
Okay, I got into tabletop gaming through the fantasy trip, but it was even before it was the fantasy trip. And I guess for the kids out there, I'm talking about GURPS, but way before that. So the fantasy trip was originally these two pocket games called Melee and Wizard, which were just, now that I'm thinking about this, ironically, were one-on-one battle games played on a map. But then they developed a role-playing system on top of that became the fantasy trip that Steve Jackson Games just re-released with a very successful Kickstarter. And we played that before we ever played Dungeons and Dragons, because I was a youngin' at the time, but we preferred the tactical combat elements of it more. We were more into that than we were the role playing, which again now strikes me as I'm saying it out loud, makes me suddenly realize my own game design so much more. But from that, we did move into Dungeons and Dragons, and then in high school, as all good gamers do, into 8,000 other systems. But for me, in my gaming career, I guess for me it's been primarily about superhero role playing. I found Champions in 1981. That became the hero system, and played that really on and off for decades. There was never a time in which I wasn't doing something with that game. And I've tried pretty much all of the other, like any superhero gamer, there is no Grail superhero game that hits all the buttons. But those are the games that I've tried out the most. But for my group, because I have been fortunate enough to have almost a steady crew that has not, faces have come and gone, but there's been a core to this group that has been unchanged now for 30 years. So yeah, 30 years with basically the same group of players. We know what we like, and we definitely never have left the sort of to use some of the terminology, we never quite left the gamist sort of side of things. We like our character sheets to have, here's the cool things my character can do, and these cool things have a mechanical value to them, and I can compare my cool things versus this other guy's cool things, and know that they're actually going to make a difference. That's the way that we've always played. We tried, for example, we tried Fate, which I don't consider an uncrunchy game, but certainly one that is more focused on narrative, and it didn't work for us. And as much as I am personally intrigued by Powered by the Apocalypse, I don't know that it would work for us again, for a similar reason. That we like to have a lot more quantifiable mechanics in our gameplay, and that's always been the case. Even when we've had epic storylines and some great dramatic role playing, we want to know what that when the dice come out, that the dice matter. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I need you to know that your like core gaming group itself is older than me.
Yeah. Yeah, I met them in high school, and we never parted ways. Even though like I said, people come and go, but there's never been more than a couple of months in which we haven't been actively playing on a pretty much weekly basis. I consider my gaming group as much my family as my family, and I consider GMing pretty much as much of my career as my career.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, especially as a like, especially doing game design, GMing is going to help a ton with that.
Yeah, yeah. Though sometimes it helps to have that the other side of the table go, like, no, that's not fun to do it that way, and that's an important thing to hear as well.
Yeah, I'm very lucky that with my group I get a lot of experience on both sides of the screen. Things would not be I would not be as happy if I was always the DM.
Well, I don't know if it makes me a power mad despot that I am far more comfortable on the GM side of things.
I mean, different things work for different people, right?
Right.
Just sometimes I just want to be the guy that punches things in the face with my flaming fist, not the guy who worries about the plot.
That's a fantastic way to be.
Sorry, I'm still stuck on the flaming fist art. That is good. Yeah. Oh man, he's even got like the suspenders that aren't actually like being used, they're just kind of flopping about, which is exactly what you want in a close melee fight. Things just flopping about attached to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm thinking of Yori Agami in King of Fighters actually fights with his pant legs tied together. He's got a rope in between his pant legs, which seems pretty inefficient, but hey, it works. That just shows how good of a fighter you are when you have that sort of
thing. Yeah. Hey, as long as it works.
That's right. And allow me to actually make sort of a game design moment about this. That one of the things that Fight does is it doesn't make a deal about those kinds of details. For to make another comparison to the White Wolf Street Fighter, your character doesn't have a style or a restriction on what kind of moves that they can do in their style. It's because it's effects based. You just get what do I need to do to get this move to perform the way I want it to in the game, and that might also entail the fact that that you could be shooting a flaming fist across the screen, or you might be pulling out a handgun, or you might be calling lightning from the sky, and the differences there are going to be just in terms of game mechanics. There isn't going to be a greater complication. Sometimes people wonder, well, can you have guys with swords fighting against guys without swords? Sure, the sword's just the effect of his fighting abilities. There's no weapon lists or armor lists or things like that. You will build up all of the powers by effects.
Which is
Including
absolutely,
if you want to fight with your hands tied together or with suspenders flopping around.
which is absolutely the right way to do this for this kind of genre. Trying to
Right.
go like full simulationist on a fighting game is that wouldn't be good. That would be.
No, you'd get as many fights about whether it was realistic as you would about D&D players arguing about medieval weapons and armor.
I am often the guy arguing about that for good or for ill. I mean, I know when to shut up, but you know.
Yeah, you can have a lot of fun with that as long as eventually you just know that it's a D6. You hit, roll your damage.
Yeah. Sometimes I like to torment my DM for asking just like unnecessarily detailed questions about the weapons and stuff like that, or NPC names. That's always the one that gets her.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Naming people is hard, man.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Of course, given that we both switch off who DMs, she gets her revenge for that. Oh. Well, I think that about covers it.
Okay, all right. Did did you get what you need?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This has been great.
Excellent.
Is there anything that I haven't touched on that?
I think. Um, I'm going to probably think of something as soon as we get off the call here. But um, no, other than the more sort of very very general. For all of you who have supported the Kickstarter, thanks. It's had a very good first part of its run, and I'm very thankful for that. And please feel free to share it and make it better known, so we can hit our goal.
Yeah, right. You're at what looks like about 40-ish
Oh,
percent.
45. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, 40, 45. Yeah,
yeah, and
not too bad for 5 days.
yeah, just under a month to go.
Yeah.
That is certainly not bad. Well, uh,
So I just gotta keep up the momentum and see where it goes.
well, hopefully this helps.
Yes, I hope so too.
Well, best of luck to you. It's been great
Thank you very
talking to
much.
you. Yeah,
Thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed doing this. It was fun.
yeah. Well, have a good one.
All right, go back and get some sleep.
Yeah, I will.